Also, I think another reason Rodgers has come back as well, because he doesn't want that to be his departure to be the end of the story. I think there is a bit of him that would like to see the picture on the wall. And listen, and I say again, people think it's disingenuous because of what happened the last time round, but he does come from a family who are Celtic daft.
Listen, I don't think Celtic get a manager of Brendan Rodgers' ilk without there being some kind of emotional connection to the club, because in terms of finances, he could get a lot more money.
I mean, I know for a fact he turned down Saudi.
He's not short.
There has to be a pull. There has to be some kind of connection that would bring you up. But obviously, in terms of the finances now, it's huge, Michael. Like, this opens the door now to Champions League riches that blow anything else out the water. Celtic already, of course, on a very sound financial footing. They could cash in Matt O'Reilly. If Jeremy Frimpong makes a move, there'll be more money coming in. It's been a really sustained period of dominance across the last 20 years. Where do you think they go from here now in the summer?
I think the phrase is minted, aren't they? I mean, they've got plenty of money in the bank, and now they're going to be another big whack of money coming in. I think there has to be lessons learned from the last two windows. I think Adam Ida's probably the only real sign that I think is being the business. I mean, you look at the game at Ibrox last week, the starting lineup, not one new signing from last June. I mean, signed 15 players or something like that. Not one new signing in that team. It was pretty much 9 of the team that won the league the year before, minus Jota and Starfelt, and bringing in Forrest and Scales, who were bit part players over that time. So, one was on loan elsewhere. So the recruitment wasn't particularly great in the last two windows. The talk last summer when he came in was, I mean, forget the tabloid war chest and all that. He's running a Champions League war chest to spend in it, and he spent money, but it was all on quantity. They've been spending 10 players, spent £21 million, £1 and £2 million players here and there. With prospects, younger guys. Listen, that's worked a lot of times for Celtic. Matt O'Reilly was a prospect, 1.5 million from MK Dons. He's now the best player in Scotland. So that you can't really argue that sometimes that does really work, but sometimes you need to go and get a higher level of gamble. Do you know what I mean? Every player they're going to buy is going to be a prospect. Every one of them. They're not going to go and spend some 25 million on a 29-year-old striker. That's not going to happen. There will be a developmental aspect to it, but it's to take it up to the next level of development. He did it with Hudson Edward, who signed for £9 million, a higher level of development, who goes on, makes him £20 million.
Adam Ida could be similar. You think 23 still fits in that bracket where you could bring him in, and again, 2 years down the line.
International player potential. But I think this summer, I think Celtic fans are right to think, right, you've now got a huge pot of money. Let's not go into the Champions League again with the hands tied behind the back, with guys that are getting untested and untried at that level, and you could get a bit of a fright, which happened at times this year.
It's awkward though, isn't it? Because what you're talking about, if you're going out to talk about quality, you're also talking about a long-term contract. You don't want to break the wage structure itself. They won't break the wage structure at the club.
They're going to have to at some point.
I don't think they'll deviate significantly from the structure that's in place just now. I think that Hudson Edwards may be like a classic example of where Celtic can push the boat to, but I don't think you're going to see people talk about marquee signings and bringing in, a guy at 26, 27 at his peak. I don't think realistically that will be a possibility.
I don't think the interesting thing about it, first of all, is people talk about like they've got to go into the £7, £8, £9 million bracket, and they will all do that because I think Ida will be a big chunk of that, and you just had to listen to Rodgers last night and think that Ida's a certainty. Bernardo is going to be a £6 million player, and I think they'll take him. Especially
with O'Reilly, I suppose.
O'Reilly's gone, and I think Bernardo. I think he likes Bernardo. He likes the age of Bernardo. Likes his technique. Likes his mentality. So I think he takes him. But the problem with £6, £7, £8 million player can be summed up in this Queen's Park centre half, the Rangers centre half that they're sniffing around. He's 24, I think he's 25, 26, so he's a centre-half, so you've got a possibility of a resale, because 28 for a centre-half's not a problem. But QPR's looking for 7. Now the young man has got Burnley and Bournemouth in for him, so he can choose Vincent Kompany and a Burnley project, or he can choose playing in the English Premier League. Celtic are going to him and saying, you're going to play in front of 60,000 fans. Look what we did for Van Dijk. Look at what we did for Starfelt. Look at what we did for Armstrong, Christie. You'll get Premier League, but you'll get Champions League here. So will the guy swither? I don't know the guy, but that's their pitch. Another pitch is the agent says, well, that's all great. And you know what? He's quite interested. What are you going to offer us a week? And that's when the wage structure is. Because you're not going to buy a guy turning down a Premier League offer, even from Bournemouth. You're not going. Well, what's he going to want? 50, 60 grand a week?
I think that's where the headache is. I think that's where the real problem.
Why is that a headache though?
Because I think once you open the door,
the argument is that there's one guy on 70 grand a week, and the rest of them on 20. There's going to be disharmony in the dressing room. Why? Why would that cause disharmony? See that guy's doing the business and get me my win bonus every week.
It's human nature. I think it's
every team has got a guy who's got more money than.
But maybe not so
that's how it works.
Not with such a chasm. I don't think.
Not if you're centre half.
If this guy's scoring 30 goals, get me 30.
Get
me 40 win bonuses this year, I'd be quite happy to give me money.
Also, but it's a question of sustainability. So Celtic right now have all this money. You've opened the door to these Champions League funds. However, next season, getting into Champions League is a lot tougher. Next season, you almost think it's nigh on impossible for a Scottish team. It's not impossible, but it's going to be very difficult for a Scottish team to get through. So if you look at that for next season, if you look at it across the next 5 seasons, what's your finances going to look like across not the immediate term, but the longer term? And can you afford to then, if you have 1 on 50, 60 grand a week, before you know it, you're going to have 3 or 4. Can you sustain that over the course of a 4-year period?
Yeah, but the only way to stop the difficult route into Champions League is to perform in the Champions League. So therefore, they have to speculate and invest to perform at a level to get the coefficient points to stay in there. So if they don't do it, you bumped out, it becomes harder. So you want a virtuous circle or a vicious cycle. That's what you're going to be. So they have to get this right, that they can get to that level. I'm not saying go and blow the whole lot. We could probably Burnley spent 100 million quid last summer and get relegated.
Burnley, I was going to say the parachute payment offsets.
But Celtic, you could go and spend £100 million and not make a dent in the Champions League.
That's really a gamble. That's a big conundrum.
That's a big, and I don't think that's a gamble that they're going to take. Listen,
the evidence is there. It's not a gamble.
I always say, see when you're looking at the future, look what they've done in the past. It's always a good sign. And what Celtic have done in the past, and there's been huge shouting the ball and breach of the peace about it. But if we talk about the last 25 years, just to round it up, there'll be the success in Scotland has been unprecedented. You know, the dominances of the skill.
I'll tell you what the dominance is. Across the last 20 years, or since 2000, 18 leagues, 38 trophies, 6 trebles, 6 doubles, 9 in a row, and a quadruple treble. And there was an invincible. So
the last 20 years for their strategy has ensured domestic dominance. In the last 20 years as well, everybody shouts and balls about this flawed, and another window's coming, they can't buy and all that. You see, if you look at the cold facts of Celtic's transfer strategy, it's one of the most successful transfer strategies in the game. Yeah. People will talk about, look at Tillio and look at, whoever, look at this one, look at that one, you see, yeah. But look at O'Reilly, look at Jota, look at Armstrong, look at Van Dijk, look at Edward. You just go on and on.
You could go through it. Every other season, you've had one marquee exit. You've had an exit that banks.
The biggest problem with Celtic in the last 20 odd years, the catastrophic season for Celtic, was that they didn't sell at the right time.
Yeah. Exactly, and that underpinned that whole season because you have guys like Edward,
4 guys
Christie,
that didn't want to play.
Didn't want to be there, and that becomes toxic.
Absolutely.
Within the dressing room. You have people, the heart goes out the team entirely. That again, though, that's almost only framed in hindsight. At the time, you're in a no-win situation because if Celtic had sold at that point, then you would be lacerated for selling your best players.
Rangers have got the problem now, and they've had it. The Rangers have made an absolute mess of it because they've ran down contracts. But in the season that they won their title, they could have sold Morelos and Kent in the summer, and they had good offers from people. Well, I can see the keyboard warriors. There was never a bid for. We know there was a bid for Morelos. We just know that. I mean, I was privy to that information.
The structure wasn't great, though, wasn't it? I mean,
structure was terrible, but
it was better than what you got.
Is it the man for the crew come once a week? He gets 5 pence a week to pay it up.
But since the guy walked away from nothing. Now the problem then was, and the problem with all this is politics, because if you said in a straight economic thing, should they've sold Morelos and Kent, that's absolutely economically that's your model. If they had, there'd be protests in the street. Might not have won the league. And it comes around this time as well, because when we move on to talk about Rangers, the smart business move at the moment is to sell anybody that moves. Sell anybody and get a price for. And people buy into that as a concept. We should be producing players and nurturing them. They buy into that concept until you actually sell them.
Yeah.
Imagine what the reaction will be if Rangers sell Butland, for example, this summer.
I think that's looking increasingly likely.
Yeah, but I think if it depends on the value. I think most supporters know. I mean, last summer at Celtic, when Jota gets a £25 million bid from Saudi. I mean, Jota, a much loved player for Celtic, who seemed to have a home there as well. Even the most ardent fans are thinking, wow, 25 million? He's done well, but you've got to take the money. I mean, you can't knock him back, let him knock that back either. So I think people understand.
I think
at that level, I mean, letting talk when they're cheap, it's a different matter. But if you get the right value for these players, then I think people will accept it.
I think the key is that when you are seen to invest and then sell on, that then the funds go back in to the team, that you get some of it, and you think Celtic have done that very well. You think Neil Letty, if you go all the way back to Aidan McGeady, going in Neil Lennon, then rebuilding a team with the funds that he got from the sale of McGeady to Spartak. Then,
and I mean, when you go through that whole list and the transfer thing, but people don't forget. I mean, people will talk about, you know, the guys that came in and Yangs or whatever, O's and things like that. See, when you think back on the Frimpongs, Juranovics that they made a buck on very, very quickly. I mean, they turned Juranovic round like they put him into the garage, gave him a spray paint. He was out the next transfer window.
And it was seamless when you had Alistair Johnson coming in. It was almost like it was just a conveyor belt. It was just like, here's another.
But that's the way it should work. I mean,
that's when it's successful. When your strategy's successful.
It's a gamble. I mean, listen, players come and go all the time. There's no constants unless it's, I don't know, James Forrest. He's the only constant, isn't he?
Well, that's another. I mean, that's another topic.
What a story he has been.
Well, what a story he is, because he, especially if you're a football fan of a certain generation, that I am. Now, the fact that when you sit and go through your Wikipedia last night to look at Forrest's career, say, oh, he's had a great career. No. Forrest could be, and reasonably, the greatest ever Celtic player in terms of medals won. And that's what's in his sight. The greatest ever.
Yeah.
And what's more incredible about it is the fact there's been a question mark that's hung over him until the last month, when all of a sudden he's come back into
Remember when he got the 4-year deal? Remember he got the 4-year deal? What is Celtic doing signing this, I mean, he was good in his day, but he's a dud now, he's done. Send him away to Hibs and loan.
He was one of the players actually that Rodgers really reinvigorated when he came back the first time. He really got the best out of him in terms of goals and assists. And whereas, would you take him?
He was on his way out.
Would you take him to the Euros?
Oh, but take him to the Euros, without a doubt, because he's not only is he in banging form. I mean, he's been terrific the last month of the season. But he's also something we've not really got the Scotland squad. I mean, he's natural width, which Scotland doesn't have at all. I know we don't play that way, but we could need it. He can play a kind of wing back role, because he run up down that flank, and he's good defensively. He can play up front. He's played up front, led the line. So he's about 3 positions in one. If there's an extra 3 seats in the plane now with the new squads, I think he's surely put him on one of them. It's a no-brainer to me.
Another thing is, and it matters a lot. He's been in the squad, so he knows the way Clark works. Another thing, he's a good type. You're not bringing in a guy that's going to, do we bring him in because there's question marks over what he does?
He's not very agitated. He's the most unflustered, calm.
I mean, we again talking last night about how in January, when he was talked about as being a loan his comments last night, well, I just stopped down, got my head in and said, well, if I really stick into training, I've got to ask the manager a question.
He's reminiscent of Gordon Strachan, isn't he? He's just a
good teammate.
He's the most kind of humble, unassuming guy. I mean, we've known him for years and dealt with him for years. I remember, a great story sums him up. I remember we were in Scotland, I think it was in Albania. It was like deepest, darkest Albania. It wasn't even the capital, it was like somewhere up in the middle of nowhere. And he scored twice, and it was like important goals. I think it was under Art McLeish, the game, double header. He scored a hat-trick against Israel next game, I think. But they got us to the playoffs, they got us to the Euros. But anyway, he scored 2 goals, man of the match in Albania. But he got drug tested after the game. So as you know, there's the mix zone afterwards. You're waiting for players to pass to interview. So we're grabbing a few players. But we need to wait for the hero of the hour to speak. But he's the last man because he's in the bathroom. So we're all hanging there. It's now 1 o'clock in the morning in deepest, darkest Albania. And wee James walks through and he just wanders through and he starts walking past us. And I'm like, where are you going? He's like, you want to talk to me? You're like, yes, we want to talk to you. Like, you're the man of the match, you just run the game. We're like, yes, please. And he's like, all right. Completely like, oblivious to I mean, oh, sorry, I didn't realise it. Like, what you talk to me? But that sums him up.
It's kind of strange. He's only really had the love and recognition from Celtic fans when he's come back into the team for this business end of the season. But